It's Chris, host of The Heart of the Story. Welcome to the show.
We have a special guest in the building, virtually, Brandon Barnum. So, let's start with, every time on this show, we always start with the beginnings of someone's life, and then we allow it to go off course to kind of just let it go the way it's supposed to go. What's said is what's supposed to be said is kind of our motto. So with that being said, Brandon, I know a little bit about you, but I don't know anything about your early days.
Mm,
So I know about what you're doing now,
yeah.
but I don't know early days. Well, tell us about early days.
So when you say early days, we talking personal or professional?
Both, man. Like
Okay.
about like where you grew up
Yeah,
and
you
like,
bet. Yeah,
I-
so I born and raised in Portland, Oregon, came from the rainy Pacific Northwest. It's beautiful up there, but a lot of rain. So as long as you're good with the rain, it's good. But I was actually raised by lesbians. My parents got divorced when I was 5. My mom became a kind of hippie lesbian. And then we moved around every single year. I went to a different school from kindergarten through 6th grade every single year. So it was constantly on the move and learning how to meet new people. And, the gift of that was that I constantly got to meet new people and get out of that comfort zone. So, ended up going to Portland State University and met my wife now. We just celebrated our 27th wedding anniversary last Friday, been together 31 years. But before I met her, I found out in college that you don't have to be married to have a kid. And so at the age of 22, I had a son. At the age of 24, I had full custody and I was a single dad. And so that really sort of changed my trajectory. At that point, I was working as a marketing director for an estate planning law firm in Portland, Oregon. And then I wasn't making enough money to cover the house that I had bought and the daycare payments that I had to make. So made a change, got into the mortgage industry. And, from there, that's where I learned the art and science, what I now call raving referrals. And that changed my life. And, over the last 28 years, I guess it's been now, I've just been on a pursuit of helping people kind of learn that same craft and do more business with people that they love.
that is a very fascinating backstory. Very fascinating backstory. Parents got divorced really early. I'm assuming it means you ended up going with your mom. Did your dad not get any custody?
No, my dad ended up moving up to Seattle, Washington, which is about 3.5 hours away, and he would come down every other weekend and visit. But no, I lived with my mom and whoever she happened to be with at the time. She was one of those, footloose, fancy free types of people that had lots of different transitions in her life, and so dad was the total opposite. He was like a civil engineer and planner. He built or planned airports and a nuclear base for the Navy. And so, complete opposites. And they always say opposites attract and sometimes opposites attack. So after their marriage dissolved, I was with mom and her friends and grew up by going to an ERA match, and my mom was on the rugby team. So a really unique upbringing for sure.
Dude, how did that impact you, you think? Being from like having your parents kind of be polar opposites,
Yeah.
being raised in a little bit more of an unstructured, unstable environment.
Well, unstructured is the word, Chris. There were no rules in my house, right? As long as I did the right thing, but I always was basically given the freedom and flexibility to do whatever I want. That's just who my mom was. And so that's what life was like with her. Now with my dad on the every other weekend, it was more structured and disciplined, but he's trying to do the best he could to connect, but he also had a very low EQ, emotional quotient. So
Mm.
while he was brilliant from an academic perspective, we never really connected emotionally. So I never felt like my dad cared. I never heard those words, I love you or I'm proud of you, which I shower my kids with as a result. But it helped shape my personality because I learned to adapt. And, as a kid, again, going to all these different schools, I was constantly in a state of adaptation. There was just no stability in my life early on and no financial stability either. My mom worked at a thrift shop at one point, and then she worked in an insurance industry, and then she worked for the railroad. She was like the first female engineer working at the railroad in Oregon. So fascinating backstory, and it's made me who I am. So I don't wish it were any different, but I certainly created a much different life for my children.
Well, that did that motivate you? Did you like at an early age? Did you have this drive of like saying, "This isn't how I want to have my adult life be, how I want my kids to be," or when
Oh
did?
yeah. Big time, big time. So my first girlfriend in high school was a Mormon girl, and I just loved how close knit her family was, and I was just drawn to it. We dated for a couple of years, and they took me in as one of their own because I think they saw the instability. So I would go to church with her, and just I loved how connected their family and their community was, and that just really spoke to my heart, and that was something that I wanted to create for my children down the road. And so yeah, that absolutely, it created that desire.
I absolutely love that. And then you going into your career, you ended up making that transition to mortgage. What brought you into mortgage from where you were at? Why'd you think, yeah, I'm gonna go into mortgage? It'd be 28 years ago. So I mean, you're talking late 90s.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been good with numbers and math. That's something that's just come easy to me. It's just how God created me. So that was appealing. I was looking prior to that, going into that, my son's mother had kidnapped him for 5.5 months. So she had him for an every other weekend visit and never brought him home. And so for 5.5 months, I was searching for him, and, was had him registered with all the different missing children's organizations, was working with the Portland police. And finally, the detective called me up one day. I was actually supposed to go onto a TV, a national TV program that wanted to interview me. And so I called the detective that morning and said, "Hey, this TV program wants to interview me, and I want to get promotion to help find my kid." And she said, "You can't do it." And I was so mad that day because I'm like, "What do you mean? I've got to find my son." And she calls me up later in that day and says, "You want to talk to your boy?" And it was awesome and amazing. But after that experience, I had to just find a different industry. I was looking around at different opportunities, and my mother at that point was in the real estate industry, working in the commercial real estate world. And so I thought, okay, well, I've always been good at math. I like big numbers, and there's an opportunity to make big income here. And so that's what drew me in.
Interesting. So your mom is actually kind of like brought you in.
Well, kind of. And actually, now that I think about it, the mortgage lender that helped me originally buy my house when I was 20, I think I was 24, 25 when I bought my first house. So I had gone through that process and experienced what it was like. And this guy had helped me to buy my first house early on. And so, I thought, oh, I can do that. So, but it was definitely the fact that she was in the real estate business. I thought, okay, at least I know I've got one person that would send me business.
That's good. That's good. And then from there, that's how you started your raving reviews, like your
I,
raving program. Because if I'm assuming because of how that's kind of like you thought, you got to build a book of business. So then you built it by necessity, I'm guessing.
yeah, I did. I had a mentor, and that's what changed my life. I had somebody that taught me the art and the science of what I now call raving referrals. And I basically went and interviewed all the top producers I could get, both in the mortgage and the real estate space. And I said, "How are you winning so big? Right? What's the source of your success?" And they all said the same thing, which was referrals. So then I dug deeper, and on the mortgage side, I said, okay, where are you getting your referrals from? And it was realtors, number one, financial planners, attorneys, and some home service pros. And so I actually created an early version of Zillow. I was fascinated by technology. I had a great instructor at university that said, you've got to look with new eyes and see what the problems of the future are and solve them. And so
Mm.
the internet was pretty new. This is 1997 at this point. So I built a website in Portland called pdxhome.com. And what I did was I created an online home buyer guide. And then I went out to realtors and I would drive along the city streets. And if I found a property that was on a busy street that looked like a decent home,
Hmm.
then I would call up the realtor and said, hey, I'd like to feature your listing on the Portland Online Home Buyer Guide. And about 60% of them would say yes. I don't know why the other 40% didn't, because it was free. There was no catch and no cost. But what I did then is I created kind of an early version of Zillow. I would put those properties that I featured on the website, and that allowed me to add value to the realtors that I was winning relationships with. And I chose properties on busy streets because I knew they would get more visibility. And I also knew they wouldn't turn over very quickly, right? So a lot of cars driving by, and on the bottom of the for sale sign, it said, view this home at pdxhome.com. Now, this is 97. And so people are just starting to get online. But in Portland, we had Intel and we had Tektronix. So it was known
Yeah,
as the Silicon Forest. A lot of people that were into tech. And I said, people want to be able to sit at home in their underwear and look at properties. So we had online listings before Remax did, for example. And that helped me get in the game, develop relationships, and add something of value that was different than everybody else.
that's fascinating. What did that turn into over time?
Well, it helped me 10x my income in 18 months. And so what I started in May of 97, and at the end of 98, I had made $200,000 in 1998, right? So my income went from 20,000 a year to $200,000 a year. And at the end of 98, I looked at every single transaction and I said, okay, where's this business coming from? It was all mostly realtor referrals. And I had one realtor that had sent me $50,000 in income, right? So just one of those relationships was 25% of my income. And so from there, I continued to grow my mortgage business. I started my own mortgage brokerage called Integrity Lending, and we grew that to 3 branches and 30 loan officers that were working for us. And then after the big short, the mortgage meltdown of 07, 08, I realized that I had kind of accomplished what I had set out to. I had sort of mastered the craft. It really wasn't juicy for me or exciting anymore. And the mortgage market just fell apart. So at
Yeah.
that point, I felt a calling to go create a company that I co-founded with some founders called Humanity Unites Brilliance. And it was a personal development company
Hmm.
where we donated 40% of gross revenue to charities. And so that was like the most fulfilling time in my life, quite frankly, because we did amazing things. We did the single largest feeding day in the United States, and we had Shaquille O'Neal come out and
Hmm.
down in LA, and we did volunteer trips and took people over to like we did the largest teacher training in the country of Liberia, and we had the president of Liberia come out. So it was just a surreal, amazing experience. And then from there, I've been building tech that helps people build raving referrals for the last 14 years. So I created a company called Trusted Team that we ended up merging with another company to create refer.com. We built that up to 5 million members
Hmm.
in about 185 countries. And then we exited that in 2019. And I was sitting on the sidelines, and that's when I started working with somebody here locally in Phoenix. And we came up with this idea of what if we could create a referral network exclusively for professionals who serve homeowners. And so we started that as the Homeowner Alliance, and then we acquired the domain HOA.com. And now we're on a mission to revolutionize the homeowner association industry.
Fascinating. So this is your really, you've had two exits. You've had two exits pretty much utilizing the same go-to-market strategy twice.
Yeah.
And then you also did a humanitarian aid piece. When did you make the transition to Phoenix? I mean, I'm assuming with kids, I mean, you had a custody with your first kid. When did you make the move to Phoenix? Did you have any custody issues moving that kid to
No,
Phoenix?
I had full custody. And by that, we moved here 10 years ago in 2004. At
Okay.
that point, my son was 22, my first son. So he had already moved out and was on with his life. He had moved to Nashville and was playing music. And our other two kids were at the perfect transitionary point. My son, who's now 24, was about to go from middle school into high school. And my daughter, who's now 21, was about to go from elementary school to middle school. And so they were both transitioning at the same time where they were going to have to change schools anyway. And so my wife came down here for business. She sells technology in enterprise world, and she was down here. And in February of 2004, she was down here, and she said, you know, it's 85. She calls me up. She's like, it's gorgeous here. I don't want to leave. I don't want to come home. And I'm up there coaching baseball, and it was like 35 degrees. And I said, well, it's freezing here, and I don't want to be here. So we talked to the kids. She brought our son down here and helped him to see what life would look like. And he was in, and our daughter was in. So we made the transition in 2014.
Nice. 2014. Nice. And what does she sell?
Works for a company called Cribble. It's a cybersecurity, data analytics, and data visibility company. So she works with enterprise accounts and helps them better manage the data that they ingest and also protect against cybersecurity threats.
And that is so fascinating. That's some pretty heavy tech. That's
Oh, big time. And she works with like the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officers for these major companies. And, you know, all the brands that I would say are her clients, you would know them instantly because they're the biggest companies around.
that is fascinating. Well, dude, I've always loved, and I think it's good for our users, our listeners to know more about you because I love what you're doing. Even see the sign behind you, Unity through that is so important. We were just talking with a guy yesterday who the dude built a really successful co-working brand,
Hmm.
took it to scale, New York Stock Exchange, exited it, and now he's doing again in the real estate space. He's trying to build the exact same model in the real estate space. And we were talking about it. We were like, the human element. People are missing the human element of
That's
life.
right. That's right.
People are missing the human element. Whenever you have a transactional relationship, you feel it. You can feel the difference. You can feel the element of it. I mean, I'm going through it right now with lawyers on a family law case, and it's like, and I deal with it. We dealt with it on the real estate space at times where you can feel the difference, where you feel like the person on the other side of the phone just views you as a dollar sign.
Hmm.
You can feel it when someone just views dollars or just views you as a means to an end to get to the next step rather than recognizing for who you are. You are a person, and that matters.
It does.
So I see that you out of a necessity you started going the rate of referrals, but what can you speak on from the element of that you've seen with putting people over profits? I mean, I'm assuming with a lot of with the two businesses you exited, you have a lot of relationships you've built that have not directly led or tied to dollars. Can you speak a little bit more on that of like to the element of like not necessarily not necessarily building relationships with the intent of dollars, but for the sake of relationships and like how that then ties back.
Yeah, absolutely. We teach people to lead with love, right? And to serve, don't sell. right? Because when you're just like you're saying, Chris, when you're coming from that service energy, you can feel it, right? When somebody's selling you, you feel it. And now on LinkedIn, I'm getting pitch slapped all the time, right? The first time somebody connects with me and we've never even had a conversation and they're immediately trying to sell me what they're doing. So people absolutely feel it. But when you serve and you focus on the other person, it's really about focusing on others rather than yourself. That's the difference, right? That's the relationship. Because when you care, and it's really about how do you serve them. And that's been my experience with you, Chris. Like since our first meeting and encounter,
Yeah.
you've shown up as service. You're constantly saying, how can I help you? How can I serve? And you've introduced me to some amazing people because you're all about service. This sign, if you look at the word community, unity is in the word. There is no community
Mm.
without unity, right? And so that's why we've really chosen that is as our mission is to create and create those connections within communities. But when it comes to individuals, yeah, like yesterday I was talking to my mentor, Mark Victor Hansen. He wrote those Chicken Soup for the Soul books and a bunch of others.
Mm-hmm.
He and I have now been friends for over 20 years, right? And we've got a mastermind coming up, which I'd love to invite you to join us for. And, Mark's going to come be there as well, not this weekend, but the next weekend. And, we were just having a conversation about not just business, but about
Mm.
life. And we're in such an important time in our nation's history, but in our global history as well. Right now, where people are divided and they don't feel like they can really talk often about the things that matter to them and they care about. And that's a shame. We've got to get back to unity, right? A lot of our politicians are trying to divide us and steer us to their side of the aisle, and we got to come back in the middle. I was really appreciative of some of the elements of that last night. For those that watched the vice presidential debate, that was the one thing that I appreciated is instead of attacking each other, like JD Vance could have just gone at one point and gone into attack mode. But instead, he didn't do that because he understands that it's really unity that we need to create in our country to make America great again.
I completely agree. I did watch part of that debate, and I got to be honest, I did love how much. I remember even hearing at one point, I think it was Walls made a reference of, I feel like we agree on a lot more issues than not, and I loved that point because it's like, are we really that far off from each other? I think a big issue that I see in today's world, the number one big issue I see is people aren't talking.
Yeah.
People don't communicate. And so then they create a disconnect. They create an assumption that then of that we're far apart. And then that disconnect just grows and grows and grows and grows till we become enemies off of an assumption that we're enemies and that we're different. When we we actually weren't that different.
Yeah, and it's been perpetuated by social media, quite frankly. If you watch the documentary, I don't know if it's still on Netflix, it was at one point called Our Social Dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating. Did you see that, Chris?
I have seen that one, yeah.
Okay. And so what happened, and some of the tech, not even founders, but the engineers of the day, as they were designing the algorithms, right? They taught it to seek profit over people, to your point earlier. And as a profit motivator, what they found was that the most profitable clicks were the ones that guided people to what they already believed in, and they really helped divide the nation, right? Because they fed them only the side of the story that they believe is true. And so it just reinforces this opinion on either the left or the right, either way. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
there's been such division on the social media side. We want to take people from the online world into the real world. I don't know a lot of companies that are trying to really bring people together in the real world, but we want to break digital addiction and get families out having fun together. And so we do a lot of community impact events. Like we were at a barbecue for one of our local communities here not long ago, and there were about 50 people there, right? The mortgage lender and the realtor that lead that neighborhood with HOA.com, it had
Yeah.
invited people out. They brought their own food to throw on the grill, and we brought sides and sodas. So cost about $50. But the coolest part was there were about 50 people there. And I was looking around at one point, and there was a kickball game going on. There were dads that were playing cornhole, and there were kids that were playing basketball. And the moms were sitting around talking with the music going. And I looked at every single person at one point, and not one person was on their cell phone. People were just connecting with each other. And that's the world that we want to support and to see.
That's a beautiful thing. That is a beautiful thing. Seeing people actually talk to each other in real life and spend time with each other in real life. That is a beautiful thing. I'll connect with you offline about some of my next networking events. Started to transition a little bit. I used to do these networking events just like every other week. I'd just go to Top Golf and bring 7 to 12 people, and we would just connect in real life. And
Nice.
I always was rotating the guest list so that people were actually getting to meet people. And I kept it small so it wasn't so overwhelming. So people actually had no excuse. You have to talk to us. You have to talk to somebody.
Right.
There's no excuse of just saying, "Oh, the room's too big." Talk to somebody. I already know all these people. I don't need to talk to them. You need to talk to them because it's like I already know these people. I invited them,
Yeah.
but we're transitioning it with a slight little switch where we're doing a little bit more intentionality with our events. I'm going to connect with you offline on that of maybe putting them on your platform because I think it might be a cool spot to kind of put it on your platform. But I mean, we're missions aligned. I think kind of like final question. So we always end podcasts. I mean, I know we're short on time, but we always end shows with allowing people to highlight something, whether it be a business, which you've already talked about a lot of your businesses, but it could also be a person, place, or idea. I had one guest who highlighted stewardship.
Oh, I love it.
That's what he wanted to highlight. Got another guest who highlighted somebody meaningful in his life,
Hmm.
right? We had
Yeah.
another guest who actually highlighted a business, but it was his side hustle business that no one knows about. And he was all like, it's time to tell the world. And so it's variety.
Yeah, for me, I mean, my passion is what I call being a charity champion. And so I'm on a mission to uplift, inspire, and empower every person on the planet. That's my life scoreboard, right? And that's not me, that's we. But when I talk to business owners or business people, I'm always asking them what they're doing to really inspire others and to make a difference in their local community. And so I teach people to be charity champions, to embrace a charity or a cause that you're passionate about and infuse that into your business. Whether that's bringing your team, your employees out to volunteer, to clean up the community, to serve in a food bank, or whatever it is that you're passionate about, share that not only with your team, but also with your customers and your community, because people care. 84% of people say they want to buy from companies that are making a difference in your local community. And so the more that you share, you care, the more people care about you. But it's not about the dollars you create, it's about the impact that you make. And I believe that we're here to impact others. I think when we're focused on ourselves only, that life isn't as rich. And really, it's when we're focused on others and when we get to see the impact that we make into another human being, that's the most fulfilling experience in my eyes.
Love it. That's why you're a good dude, man. That's why I keep sending you people because I'll send you more people because you care about the people, not the profits. And that's what matters most. You can
That,
that with people where it's like they only care about profits and it's like, and you're missing the whole purpose of life,
yeah, man.
just caring about the profits. And it's like the richest man on the planet is not the man with the most dollars in the bank. It's the
Mm,
person who has the most people who shows up at their funeral, and you can actually see how many people they touched.
mm, very
So
true.
I love it. Well, my friend, it's good to have you on the show.